Whether you refer to him as Bruce Wayne, the Dark Knight, or simply Batman, the superhero has had a tremendous impact on comics, film, and TV. Appearing in over 6,000 issues of assorted comics, he is one of the most popular superheroes ever. Using Batman, the New 52, written by Scott Snyder and illustrated by Greg Capullo, I will discuss the impact color has had both on Batman's personality and in individual comic pages. According to Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, color in comics has the ability to set about a myriad effects upon the reader, from setting the mood to associating certain characters to their given roles, and much more. In Batman's comics, color is commonly used to illustrate the struggle between the two personas of Bruce Wayne, the crime-fighting hero and the billionaire. Bruce Wayne appears in comics as an outspoken billionaire whose Wayne Foundation is meant to clean up Gotham through money. Wayne is drawn clearly with bright colors and shown at the podium of a public charity function, instilling integrity in his public figure. By using colors in this way, Wayne becomes a character the reader trusts and shows that he is an honest and well-meaning person. However, in panels featuring Wayne as Batman, we see something quite different. Generally, the color palette is muted, showing darker colors and more ambiguous figures. This is partially due to the fact Batman generally appears while fighting crime in the late hours, but it also plays a crucial role in describing Batman's state of mind as he takes a wildly different persona than he does as Wayne. In many comics, Bruce Wayne struggles to keep control over himself as Batman, resulting in bouts of violence and lawlessness that Bruce does not necessarily wish. The struggle comes to the forefront in many of his comics, one of them being The Dark Knight Returns, in which Bruce attempts to live a normal life post-Batman, but he is unable to rid his alter ego, very much in the style of Jekyll and Hyde. Bruce is Dr. Jekyll, a reasonable man with passion, pictured in luminous backgrounds, whereas Batman is Mr. Hyde, the violent and sometimes ugly counterpart. The change from bright backgrounds and clear pictures and scenes with Bruce to the darker scenes of Batman show the unwavering prevalence in their contrast, representing the identity disorder that consumes Bruce Wayne every day in Gotham. Outside of his split personality is another interesting color contrast. His color as a superhero. Traditionally, heroes are dressed in white, blue, red, or some other primary color. This identifies them as patriotic in the case of red or blue heroes, and sometimes godlike when dressed in all white. On the other side, villains tend to adorn unnatural colors, and in most cases, dress in all black to signify their ties with evil. Originally, Batman was a much more colorful hero than the Dark Knight we know him as today. Batman adorned a predominantly gray suit with a black mask and a cape with a bright yellow belt, and blue outlines, projecting a much more heroic image, with the presence of the primary colors, yellow and blue. His old suit is especially heroic compared to the new blackout Batman in the Dark Knight comic and movies. The switch of colors came in 1990. It signals a switch to a different Batman, both in color and in style. The new Batman is painted a much more realistic image. He is not strictly a do-good-for-all superhero. The all-black suit changed Batman to a very real person, faced with real problems, such as conflicts between law and justice, conflicts between his split identities, and bouts of substance abuse. One of the starkest color contrasts in Batman comics is the difference between the new Batman and the Joker. Stereotypically, the hero has bright colored outfits, and the villain wears black. Shown side by side in this scene, the color contrast says a lot about both the Joker as a villain and Batman as a hero. Batman is not a role model, but a real-life vigilante, trying to rid the city of crime on his own terms. Beginning my analysis of color in specific panels, this scene shows the butler looking away in a worried manner, with a dark background showing fear of the women's proposition. However, when he answers, it is affirmatively, and he is shown in the firelight smiling. The difference between the panel in what he thinks and what he says is amplified by the changing color from the first to the second panel. In this image, Batman is rope swinging into the building in the middle of the image. The building is very dark, juxtaposed upon the rest of the city. The purpose of this contrast and coloration is to give attention to the specific building and where the action is occurring, while using the light of the rest of the city as a backdrop. It would be far more distracting to have the rest of the city dark, because the city is always bright, even at night. In this panel, color is used not only as a transition, but as a function of the plot. As the reader progresses through the panels, passage of time is shown by dismantling of objects between the first and third panels. However, you don't know what happened in between because of the lack of electricity, which we find out was cut by Batman for a very specific purpose, thus furthering the plot by having a gap of no color whatsoever. Harley Quinn is another example of how Batman comics use a very different color spectrum for heroes and villains. Generally, red and blue are reserved for heroic role models that we would deem American, such as Superman and Captain America. However, in this context, Harley Quinn wears such unnatural shades of blue and red that it in fact portrays insanity or craziness in an evil context, which is extremely accurate. As we see outside of the asylum, the windows are all dark and it appears as if no one is there. Batman approaches the building, and all that can be seen is the rain in the night sky. However, when Batman enters the building, a light appears not only through the door he walks in, but also upstairs. The use of color implies that another person is in the building and is waiting for Batman, without ever claiming any of that in the dialogue. Here we find out from the dialogue that the Joker has massacred a large amount of people. However, before digesting that, the reader develops a sense of dread simply from the color. The blood red that dominates this entire panel foreshadows and then amplifies the effect of death on the reader. By using red as the background of the scene, Capullo captivates the reader and evokes even more emotion from the issue. The scene here occurs immediately after the major action in the issue. The last scene had a very hard closure, and it was left to the reader's interpretation for exactly what happened. The interpretation that is shaped by the bright colors and warm lights of the sun in the morning is a favorable one. This use of friendly colors implies that the conflict ended in a way that is good for Batman, and also shows that the conflict is now over. In issue 18, we are introduced to a pair of new characters. Color is used to show the role these two will play far before we are familiar with their personalities. In the first panel, the bright light inside their car implies that they will be protagonists through the use of color. Also, the second and third panels show a glint in the eye of the female character. This use illustrates determination and purpose in her persona. Much like the last panel, we are introduced to two new characters. However, in this panel, as a result of the use of color, the reader assumes in something entirely different. The shade on both sides of the characters' faces illustrate that they are sinister, or may have ulterior motives. Because of this use of color, we are immediately distrustful of the two characters, before even meeting them through the dialogue. Color as a formal element is an invaluable tool for comics. It is able to invoke emotion that previously would go untapped in a comic that was only in black and white. It is able to describe characters and associate them to a certain role simply based on color stereotypes. It is also able to induce shock and interest when breaking those stereotypes. And, maybe most importantly, it is instrumental in the development and success of Batman in comics.